My name's James Tucker and I'm CEO of 27 Tech. Welcome to Navigating the FCA's Consumer Duty. I'm with Chris Croft, who's a solicitor and compliance expert, and Josh Skelding, director at 27 Tech. Let's begin with the first question. Chris, what stage of the implementation of the FCA's Consumer Duty Act are we at?
Thank you, James. Well, we're just coming up to the starting line, really. The rules come into force on the 31st of July. I think everybody in the industry has been working pretty hard. Well, most people have been working pretty hard over the last year since Consumer Duty was announced to get themselves ready for the 31st of July. It's just a starting point, really. There's a lot to do, and there will be a lot of follow-up. The rules that come into force on the 31st only apply to new products. So people have already got legacy products out there and people have got historical customers. Will have until the 31st of July next year to apply the rules. But it kicks off on the 31st of July. And I think that's just the beginning, because whilst the FCA has put a lot of guidance out and said a lot of things, I think it's very early for people to really know how it's going to impact them. I mean, what the FCA have said, I think quite clearly, is that they regard this as a major change. They expect people to embed consumer duty in their culture. They believe it's good for businesses, and I think that is right. Because if you manage to deliver the outcomes, if you communicate well with customers, if you design products well, if you deliver fair value, it's bound to be good for your business, and it's going to generate customer loyalty. But the third branch of what the FCA are talking about is that this is about understanding the customer and delivering the outcomes they need. I think the big concern for people is how they do that and how they evidence that they've done it. And I think technology is going to play a key role in that, because this is outcomes focused, and outcomes are going to be judged historically. And we won't know, I think, for some time how the FCA are really going to judge firms' behaviour. So it's an iterative process.
Chris, what do you feel are the key questions that firms need to be asking themselves in advance of Consumer Duty?
Well, I think the FCA set that out pretty clearly. They put out a publication a few weeks ago that actually set out 10 questions that firms need to ask themselves. And you can actually get a copy of that on the FCA website. But the sort of questions that people need to ask themselves is are you happy that the products and services are designed to meet the needs of your customers? What actions have you taken as a result of fair value assessments? These are the sort of questions that are being asked. And I think any firm out there needs to go through those 10 questions and make sure that they have an answer. I don't expect anybody's going to knock on the door on the 1st of August and say, how are you complying with the consumer duty? But the FCA has made it pretty clear that there's some follow-ups, and they have already said that a number of firms will be asked in September to explain what action that they have taken as a result of their gap analyses and so on. And they have also made it clear that a number of firms will be asked in January to demonstrate the sort of management information that they're now providing to boards. So I think people need to be prepared to answer those questions.
It sounds like a bit of an iterative process, Chris, for the FCA in terms of how they're going to enforce these changes. What issues do you think are likely to arise for firms where they're perhaps not in line with the guidelines in the way that the FCA will expect them to be?
Well, I think the FCA is probably going to be fairly flexible to begin with, but as I say, they will not be pleased if people have made no effort to answer the key questions or to do anything. I mean, the reality is, and perhaps one shouldn't say this, but the reality is the FCA has got limited resources. They have changed their position in recent years. They haven't made additional recruitments. But the truth of the matter is that the number of individual investigations that they carry out is relatively small. It is unlikely that the majority of people in the industry will actually have any contact at all with the FCA. I think what is much more likely to happen, given that the customer duty is based upon outcomes, is that customers will complain that they haven't got the outcomes that they require. And I think that's when people are going to find that they've got a real problem. Because as you would be aware, if customers complain and they're not happy with the result, they can go to the Financial Ombudsman Service, and the Ombudsman's certainly going to look at consumer duty compliance. And I think if people are not able to demonstrate good compliance, they'll find themselves being penalised effectively by awards that are made against them. The other thing that is an issue that I have a lot of concern about is there's a lot of organisations out there, claims handling companies and the like, who are all queuing up for the opportunity to use the consumer duty as a stick to beat the industry with. I think it's critical that people are able to show that they've adopted best practice and are able to document it, because if you have a customer that complains about the mortgage that they've been advised to take, or the financial product that they have taken out, they're not going to do that tomorrow. They're going to do it, as with often the way with these things, in a year or two's time. And at that point, people are going to be able to need to show that they followed the right advice. They gave clear and transparent and understandable advice, that the products were appropriate, suitable, and all those boxes are ticked. And I think that's, in some senses, where you come in, because people need the technology to do that.
Yeah, it certainly feels to me like the technology is going to play a critical role in ensuring that record of advice and that record of recommendation as being the correct one is going to be there and embedded in the business, and also available should the FCA or the advisor or the client themselves ever need it. Josh, what role do you see technology playing as the regulations are rolled out and as the market evolves?
Yeah, definitely. No, I think at the end of the day, technology is going to play a big part in this space. I've been working within technology and financial services now for about the last 10 years. I'm extremely interested in how technology is going to develop in this area to help advisors give the best advice post consumer duty. And I think when you're looking at it from the different pillars of consumer duty, looking at communication, for example, as the first aspect, consumer duty is really demanding that advisors can effectively communicate with their customers, give them that clear understanding of products and services, and essentially give them the information that they need at the right time and present it in a way that they can understand. And in that area, technology is going to be incredibly powerful in automating the different aspects of this client communication. For example, utilizing a CRM is going to help you schedule communication at different staging points in a process. And you can tailor that in a way that best suits the client that you're dealing with at that time. I think in addition to that, if you're looking at things like client portals, which many CRMs have, that really facilitates, a two-way flow of communication with your customer in a secure manner, but gives your customer the ability to, for example, track the different stages of a case for themselves at a time that suits them in the environment that they're in at that time. obviously automating that communication as well is going to really help to take some of the human error out of the equation. You're not going to spend your whole time writing down notes on a bit of paper to remind yourself when you last spoke to a customer. Technology is obviously going to enable you to record that, evidence that, and make sure that your client gets the outcomes that they require at the relevant time in the process. And I think as well, when you're looking at other aspects of consumer duty, ensuring that price and value are set to ensure that products are giving fair value to consumers, designed to meet the needs of different consumers. As part of that, it's really important to ensure that you're recording situations where a group of consumers have characteristics of vulnerability, for example. And again, technology in this space can be really useful because it's going to help to identify which of your clients are classed as vulnerable, allow you to segment that group as well within your database, for example. But also, it's not just a simple vulnerability flag and move on. You need to be able to record, what makes them vulnerable. Is it a physical aspect, financial? Is it something else? How long have they been vulnerable? When do we expect this to end? And then be able to report on that as well. And I think that's where technology is going to become extremely useful when looking at these different aspects of consumer duty.
I absolutely agree with that, Josh. I mean, I think some of the things you said are absolutely fundamental, because in demonstrating that you have produced the outcomes, the support and so on, it's absolutely crucial that you've got effective methods of following up with clients. And you will need to have both qualitative and quantitative data. I think historically, a lot of businesses have relied on things like, we'll use our complaints information. That will not wash in the future. As you rightly say, with vulnerable customers, actually with all customers, you will need to follow up. Advisors will need to do annual reviews. They'll need to record that. They'll need to be able to embed triggers in the system so they can go back and get feedback from people. And I think all of that is absolutely crucial. And also to record the interaction with the customers, because, as I said, I think you need qualitative data. You need to ask people and you need to record their answers, and not just rely on sort of passive systems. So I absolutely agree with everything you've said about that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day as well, I think, technology is obviously key to helping efficiency, which is obviously vital in a modern day financial advice practice. And when you're looking at trying to demonstrate to the FCA, for example, that you're offering fair value to your customers, being able to take a lot of the overhead in terms of the cost away of recording things manually and not utilizing technology is, again, going to really help you offer your clients the best price possible for that product or service in question, which I think is another, really key aspect to using technology right now.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, how the fair value outcome pans out and how they apply that, because they although they put out 100 odd pages of guidance, it's not terribly helpful on that subject. So there'll be some further discussion.
Do you think, Chris, we'll need to see how they end up enforcing that one before we get a great deal of clarity over specifically what it is they're trying to achieve?
Well, yes. I mean, historically, as you're probably aware, the FCA has always said it's not a price regulator. And it's very, very difficult to judge fair value. I think they've ducked a number of issues, because one of the things that's attracted a lot of attention recently is the fact that the banks have been accused of not passing on the benefit of interest rate rises. I mean, part of that, I think, is a misunderstanding about the economics of, mortgages and deposits. But the underlying truth is that the big banks have paid very, very, very poor interest rates on easy access accounts for many, many years. And that actually other providers challenger banks, mutuals and so on, have been forced to pay higher rates to attract funds. And it will, that's something that they could have specifically addressed, and they very much haven't. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And as I say, I think, this is an iterative process, and we'll have to wait and see how these things come out in the wash. But I think from an advisor perspective, the important thing is that they've done the value assessment and they've recorded it. And I don't think you can be blamed for the manufacturer's pricing structures.
Thank you, Chris. I'll come back to you in a moment for a final comment. Josh, would you like to make a final comment on this topic?
Yeah, I think, as I've mentioned before, and as Chris has been alluding to throughout, I think technology now is absolutely vital to helping advisors monitor, document interactions in line with the different consumer duty requirements. Using technology is going to help us to automate communication, facilitate that client segmentation so that we really understand who we're talking to and help deliver the best outcomes for them. To generate a wide variety of MI reporting as well. There's a lot of data that can be recorded in something like a practice management system, for example, and being able to report on that evidence MI reporting as well to the FCA is going to be absolutely crucial going forwards. And I think utilizing technology is just going to help ensure that advisors know that they're meeting these FCA consumer duty requirements, and at the end of the day, spend more of their time and more of their energy on delivering the best outcomes for their customers.
Thank you, Josh. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, no, I agree with Josh. As I've said before, this is outcomes focused. What the FCA expect is that people understand their customers and deliver the outcomes for their customers. What it means for business is two things. If you deliver the outcomes, then you should be running a more effective business and hopefully more profitable, more efficient. But the other side of the coin is that you need to prove that you've done all these things. And as Josh says, you need the technology to do that.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Josh. It sounds like we're about to enter into a very interesting new world of regulation in which, of course, technology will play, as it always has done, a very significant part. Thank you to everybody for watching today, and look forward to sharing further thoughts with you all in the future.